Hey guys, so I ran into Swift Current here. I didn't run in, I drove in. I needed to come in and mow my grass. And I needed to water. I'll show you. I needed to water my tree, mow some grass. You know what's funny? I planted this tree a couple years ago, I would say. My neighbor also planted a tree. Look at that thing. Is that thing not awesome? I feel like my neighbor's awesome, by the way. He's an awesome guy. I got great neighbors everywhere. Anyway, so I came in here to mow some grass. I needed to water some stuff, and I brought the Saskatchewan Crop Protection Guide because we've already scouted for weeds, remember? Now we need to know what the heck we're going to spray. I already know what the heck I'm going to spray, but I thought I'd give you a little 101 with the book. So this particular book is chemicals that we can use here in Saskatchewan, all right? Now this book gets thicker every year because things keep getting added to it. But let's just do a quick 101. So first of all, you have herbicides, this black here. You got your herbicides for your weed control. Then I believe this next run here is for fungicide control. Yes, it is. And then the next run here is for, see, seed treatment, insecticides. So most farmers already know what they're going to spray. They already know most guys are like, I always use this on my wheat, I always use this on my peas, and I always use this on my lentils, and I always use this on my canola. And for the most part, that's probably true. But then you get the odd farmers like, ooh, what's new? Ooh, I want to try that. Ooh, I want to try that. Ooh, I want to try. Ooh, that didn't work. That didn't work. I'm going to go back to what was working. Or you get guys who are like, you tell me what I should use. So some guys will go to like your retailers. The retailers are the companies who, not Monsanto and not those guys. Monsanto isn't even a thing anymore. It was bought by BASF. No, Bayer. Don't get that confused. No, they're going to like their co-ops, their CPS, whoever the retailer is, okay? And then maybe they're going to them, or maybe they're working with an agronomist. Maybe they're working with an agronomist, or maybe that retailer has an agronomist who is partnered with them. Whatever it might be, they might be getting recommendations from that agronomist or that person, okay? So they'll come out, they'll scout your fields for you, and they'll kind of make a recommendation, and that could be different every year depending on the weeds that you're growing. Or maybe you have a chemical rep who is working for like Corteva, who is working for BASF, excuse me, Bayer, whoever. Maybe they're going to come out, inspect your fields, and they're going to make a recommendation. But anytime those guys are going to make a recommendation, they're going to make a recommendation of what they sell. If Bayer comes out to do a recommendation of what products to use, they're not going to recommend anybody but themselves. So I don't really, I have great reps. I have some really great reps. But typically, I do it all myself. I'll get some guys to come out and help me for sure. But for the most part, on our farm, I am that agronomist. Now, I would probably fall into the bracket of all of the above. Okay, for the most part, I know what we put on our wheat, I know what we put on our canola, etc., etc., etc. But the odd time, I'll have a surprise field, or maybe because we're always kind of expanding, we'll take on some land with a new weed. We'll take on some land that's really dirty. We'll take on some land that maybe has some resistance, some weed resistance in it. So then maybe we got to go back to the drawing board and try something new. Maybe I need some second opinions. Maybe I need some recommendations on some different things. So I kind of fit in all the above. But for the most part, I know exactly what I'm going to spray. It's already pre-planned by the time I do my burn-off. Because my burn-off, I'm already saying that I'm going to use a group of 2 and a 4. So I already know what I'm going to go in with following that. Now that we've covered that, so if you weren't sure what you wanted to use, maybe you knew what the actives were. So let's just go through here. This here is the name. So you have your product names right here. Okay, I'm just going to try and hold on here. Okay, so a product name is a given name of a chemical. Okay, and then it's the given name by that particular company. If you have a generic out there, then maybe, so for example, there's got to be tons of generics. A generic chemical is something when the patents the company who produced that chemical has patents on it for X amount of years. When those X amount of years expire, then it's open for other companies to make what's called a generic chemical, and normally they make it for cheaper. Not like a lot cheaper, but just a little bit cheaper. So if you had a particular, like Tridem is made by Corteva, okay? It has different active ingredients in it. I think it's multiple active ingredients in it. And I use that on my wheat and my durum. It packs a heck of a punch. Now, that is basically protected by Corteva. They produced it. They put everything together. Now, say in X amount of years, whenever the patents come off of that, then perhaps maybe another chemical company will make a Tridem. It will not be named Tridem. It will be named, I don't know, toothbrush something, carpet something, whatever it might be. Everyone tries to come up with really cool names. Probably not toothbrush. I probably shouldn't be the guy naming chemicals. They always come up with Revenge, Thrasher, whatever it might be. Slasher. It's always like these slasher killing things. You know, you always want to have an epic name. You want people and farmers to be like, oh, I want that one, because that is going to decimate my weeds. There's probably a chemical called Decimator, Bomber, Massacre. I don't know what it is. But you're never going to find a chemical out there that's like lollipops, unicorns. You know, you're never going to find a chemical named stuff like that. It won't ever sell. So anyway. So now that we know that, so you got your product, okay, this is the given name. That's the given name by those particular companies. But the most important part is this. Here you go. Here's a perfect example. See all this bromoxynol? Okay? And then the other component is 2,4-D ester. These two are the exact same. Let's scroll over here. One is M-Power and one is Leader. One is by AgroCity, one is IPCO. So those are generics. Now this used to be what I would remember is I think Thumper. Is there a Thumper in here? I'm trying to remember if it's Thumper, because bromoxynil and 2,4-D is always Thumper. That was always like a Bayer thing, okay? And then that was years ago, and now there's probably like 5 or 6 different generic companies. So there's so many things that come into play. Now, I know you guys are like, Mike, wouldn't you just use the cheapest chemical? Not always. Because the big companies, they want you to buy their chemical. So how can they do that if there's a generic chemical for just about every chemical out there except for all the new stuff that's mainstream? Well, how they do that is they come out with programs. So, Mike, you buy this much Tridem or weed or herbicide, and plus you buy X amount of our fungicide, and then if you buy X amount of our insecticide, and if you do an X amount of our seed treatment, you will qualify for 1% and 1% and 1% and percent. And if you can click all the boxes, you're going to get like 5 to 10% back on all your returns. And then when you have to figure all that out, because now all of a sudden it might be cheaper than your generic by the returns and the rebates that you get. But the sucky thing is, every company does this. And so you're trying to figure out, you're sitting down and you're brainstorming, you got a little bit of blood coming out of your ears, and you're trying to figure this out. You're like, gosh, if I use this chemical, this chemical, this chemical, this chemical, this chemical, then I can get the maximum rebate out of that chemical company. But I really like this chemical because it works the best out of this particular company. So how can I use this one and still get a max amount of rebate? So this is what you're doing. This is what you're trying. You're trying to figure out which way is it going to work best for me? And at the end of the day, sometimes it's just cheaper to go with a generic. But so anyway, now that we know that, it's really important to know your active ingredient formulation, because everybody has a product name, and there could be like 5 different product names for the exact same chemical depending on how many generics there are. But there's only going to be one active. There's only one bromoxynil. There's only ever one bromoxynil. There can be a different rate of bromoxynil, like here's a 225 and a 210, but there's only ever one bromoxynil, okay? So once you know that your active ingredients are, so it's just best to talk active ingredients, because you could say, well, I'm using Badge, and the other guy's like, well, I have no idea, but I'm using like Thumper. or Buctril M, and you guys, but really you're talking about the exact same chemical, just by different companies. But if you say I'm using bromoxynil, well then you just checked all the boxes. You're like, oh, you're using bromoxynil, which is superb on buckwheat. Okay, so if you're using like there's, you know what I mean? You guys get it. You guys get it. Okay, we're moving on. You guys get the idea. So it's always good to talk in active ingredients if you can. So like dicamba is Banville, that's a product given name. There's Oracle, that's a generic one, and there's so on, so on, so on, so on, so on. Okay, so if you're a farmer or somebody who knows, most farmers do, they know exactly what active ingredients kill the best for their weeds. So if you want a dynamite thing on, say, buckwheat, bromoxynil's your chemical. But you know what? You can't just use, you have to think about all your weeds out there, because if you have buckwheat and you have kochia, bromoxynil is really weak on kochia. So now you need to figure out, how can I get something that will kill kochia weed and get my buckwheat? So now all of a sudden maybe you move to thumper, then they put some 2,4-D in there. But even that's pretty weak. Well, maybe you have Russian thistle out there too, or Canada thistle. Now you really need now you need to pack a punch into there. But so now you're like, okay, I'm going to move out. I'm going to go to a different chemical. Maybe I'm going to go to Banville and 2,4-D, or a dicamba. Here I am, dicamba and 2,4-D. But that's really weak on your buckwheat. So there's this whole thing. Or maybe you have hawksbeard. Hawksbeard, something to really kill hawksbeard. You're like Express is dynamite on hawksbeard. But Express is really weak on Russian thistle. So you're trying to find a chemical that can click all your boxes, and that's super important. So then you're going through. Most farmers know what actives are best for their wheat, so they're just flipping through. They're like, okay, I'm taking this particular chemical. I'm going to go with, say, Avenza. It's right here, and it's got these 3 actives, and each active is in a particular group. Okay, each active is in a particular group. Now your 1 and 2s, mostly your 1s, are your grassies, followed by some 2s. Okay, you can get some 2s for your grassies as well. But your 2 and 4s, are also your broadleaf chemical as well. So and 9 is Roundup. Okay, 9 is Roundup. So let's go back here, for example. Hold on here. Let's go back here. So you can search it out by active if you want to, or you can also go through the weeds. You can be like, okay, well, I have certain weeds, and then it would tell you what chemicals get those weeds, and it will tell you how well it gets those weeds. Okay, whether it gets top growth, whether S for suppression, TG for top growth, or C or 1 dot for control. So you can go through this way too if you're not really sure. You can be like, well, I have pulses. How can I control my weeds and pulses? And it will give you all the examples. Well, I have flax. What can I control? And it will list all the weeds. Here's your kochia. Okay, and then it will list the chemicals for that crop, for those weeds. So you can go this way too if you don't know. But most farmers know. They're like, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one. And then you're trying to tank mix. How can I kill this weed, this weed, this weed, this weed, and still do it economically? Remember, some chemicals don't play well with other chemicals. Okay, you put one chemical in too many, and it actually starts binding and starts fighting against the other chemical, and all you've done is spent a whole pile of money, and it just turned to sludge in your tank. You don't want to do that either. Holy crap, we're 13 minutes in. I got to speed this up. I'm sorry, you guys. So anyway, so there's that way you can do it as well. Now, we're just going to keep flipping over. So then you can go into problem weeds. So say you have special weed problems, okay? So say you have, I have no idea, I don't know, field horsetail. I've never heard of that before. We definitely don't have that, not to my knowledge. And it can tell you how you can control it, okay, with what chemicals. Maybe you have milkweed. Maybe you have, I don't know, foxtail barley. That's a very popular one. And so then it can tell you what you can use, how to kill it, how to curb it. So there's also that. And that's pretty handy, because if you're like, oh, that's a new weed out there, you get it identified because maybe you weren't sure about it. Then you can go in here, okay, I have this particular weed. I have what's called poverty weed, and it will turn me to poverty if I can't get this weed controlled, and it will tell you how to do it, okay? All right? Okay. Now, let's move over. And then there's recropping restriction herbicides. So this is the list of herbicides that have recropping restrictions. And then it will tell you the different crops you can go on. And then it will tell you how many months or a year that you can plant those crops. So there's that. There's rainfall effectiveness. Remember, every chemical has anywhere between 15 minutes, which is diquat. That is your Reglone desiccation chemical. That's basically just a fast burn down. That's all that is. That's why it's so quick. And all the way up to 8 hours, okay? Most of these chemicals are your broadleaf chemicals, okay? And they need a substantial amount of time to actually get into that plant and for that plant to take it in. If you get a rain, it's just going to wash it off, and you just spent a whole pile of money for nothing, okay? Now, I'm not trying to bore you guys. I'm trying to get through this as fast as I can. I know I stink. I'm tired. I'm growing hair out of my head, and I don't like it any more than you guys do. So, now, I'm pretty sure in here, let me pause this thing for 1 sec. Okay, so here it is. So, this is also really important to know. This is what I was talking about here in that previous video. This is herbicide-resistant weeds in Western Canada. Now, this is a big deal, you guys, okay? Here's your groups. Now, Group 2 and Group 4. So, let's find Koscheck. This is a huge one. There is so much Group 2 resistant kochia. Look, Alberta, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, overwhelming majority, okay? So if you have kochia, consider it Group 2 resistant. Now, why does that mean anything to you guys? Because maybe my chemical that I'm putting down, it happens to be a Group 2, and maybe it's been dynamite before, but maybe it hasn't been killing very good out there. Chances are it's because that particular kochia, which is pretty much all over Western Canada, is completely Group 2 resistant. It doesn't matter what type of active you have in it. If it's a Group 2, it's probably going to be resistant to it. So that's kind of the reason why this is important. And that's also the reason why make sure you kill your weeds with multiple groups, multiple actives. Okay? I'm a big fan of the shotgun approach. Now, so you got foxtail and some Group 4. Dicamba is a Group 4. Phloxipir is also Group 4. These are highly used on our farm. This is also here in Saskatchewan. So there's a lot of Group 2 and there is some Group 4. Those Group 2 and 4s, that's it. That's the majority. You don't have a lot of options after that. And then there's some Group 9 here. That's your Roundup. That's glyphosate, okay? Roundup is a given name. I always call it Roundup, but that's a given name, okay? It's glyphosate, Group 9. There's all different sorts of... Roundup is actually a trade name. Anyway, moving on. So it's really important to study what is building resistance and where is it. Now, and of course it continues on to the next page. Whew. Whew. Okay, sorry guys, I had to drink another glass of water here. I'm horsing myself. Anyway, so now you know what chemical you want to use. Okay, we just picked this one. I call it the Fopper. Now, it's a Group 1 herbicide. Now, this one is growing quite a resistance as well, okay? Now, look at this. I always have known this one because Syngenta was the first one, to my knowledge, that came out with it. It was called Horizon. And then ever since it expired, it's quite an old chemical, all these other companies have also produced it, and then they gave them the same name. So it used to be just in the book Horizon, but now since it's so many generics, they just call it by the active ingredient in it. Right? They just call it by the active. Excuse me. And so anyway, this is the one you want. So then you can go in here and it tells you the formulation of what's guaranteed, okay? And then it will tell you your container size. Then it will tell you your crop, what crops you can put it on spring wheat, including durum, okay? And then it will tell you your crop stage. Your crop stage is in here. You go all the way up to the 4th tiller. You can go all the way up the flag. Yeah, heck, you could spray this stuff during heading and it probably wouldn't hurt it, to be quite honest with you. I'm quite familiar with this chemical. And then it will tell you your weeds and your rates and the weed stage. And now if you go over here, now it's going to continue. It will get your barnyard grass, your foxtail. Actually, it's probably a little bit weak on that, I'm not going to lie. And it's will easily get all your volunteers. So then it'll also say, also for control of Persian darnel. And so on and so forth. And then it's going to tell you your application. This really gets really confusing because on the box it will tell you it will normally say 40 acres a case. But then when it comes to water, they're like, well, now we want liters per acre. Little 101, you guys. We were all once imperial here as well, okay? It wasn't until I don't know how long ago now that we decided that we were going to change the metric system. Everyone now was asking, Mike, why do you use miles and why do you use kilometers? Because we have to use both. Because the whole country is marked out in miles. When the homesteaders came and they founded this country, it was all marked out in miles. The roads are marked out in miles. Every quarter is marked. A quarter is 160 acres. Half mile, half mile, half mile, half mile. It's a half mile square. That's 160 acres, okay? And then, so you put 4 quarters equals what? A section. A section is 640 acres, and it's a mile by a mile by a mile square, okay? It's a mile by square. So, and then all the roads go by mile, the 2 mile by 2 mile. That's how it is. Everything's marked out in miles down here. And then all of a sudden we decided we're going to switch to the metric system. So now all of a sudden everything is marked out in acres and everything is marked out in miles. And now we have to go to kilometers, which does not work. So you're still going to go by miles because there's only a certain amount of road per mile. And then everything with the chemicals that we get, it comes in acres. So, because we have to have acres because we have acres, not hectares, right? So we're like, okay, it's 40 acres a case. So we need X amount of cases for 160 acres or 640 acres. So, and then all of a sudden the book's like, well, yeah, everything's going to come out in acres, but now we want you to use 20 to 40 liters. Sorry about that. Apparently my phone ran out of memory. But now you all of a sudden the book wants you to use like 20 to 40 liters an acre. So they're using liters to an acre. You know, why don't they just say U.S. gallons? U.S. gallons an acre. That's what we really want to see. But anyway, you guys get the idea. So after all that, now you have to figure out what you want to use. So you already know that you used your 2 and 4 in your burn off, and yes, you can use a 14. Like, so I've used 14s for use. Use a 14 in your burn off, and then you can go back in with a 2 and 4 because it's all about group rotating. If you can't group rotate, then you need to at least rotate all your actives within that same group. Okay. And I apologize for holding my phone down here lots of times in the phone, but it's just been a really long day, and I'm really tired today. And I'm having a lot of trouble keeping my arm up. Anyway, I lost my train of thought here. Oh yeah, so now that you know what you got to figure out, you know what actives you use in your burn off, and we used 2 and 4. And why did we use a 2 and 4 if we could use a 14? Well, I've used 14s for years. But the problem is with 14s, 14s aren't super dynamite on some of the weeds like hawksbeard that I'm really trying to get, okay? Yeah, the reps will tell you they are, but they're trying to sell it. And I've used it a lot. I've used it for years because, you know, it's nice to be able to say, yeah, I use 14s for this, and I go back my 2 and 4s, and then I'll go back in with a 14 or 15 in the fall. So you're always rotating your groups. But you can only rotate your groups to an extent until the point where you can't really kill your weeds that good. And it has nothing to do with resistance. It's just that 14s aren't dynamite on certain weeds, okay? So I chose to use a 2 and a 4. So I'll use my dicamba. And we already know that there is some dicamba resistance. I don't believe that we have any, but we also don't want to have any. And then we use Express, okay? Dicamba and Express, both 2 and 4. So now we're going to come back in with a Ferlazolam and a Phylloxipure mixed in with Ester 700. I'm not going to use this. I'm going to use Ester 700. And that's, yes, still the 2 and 4, but Ferlazolam is a different active and Phylloxipure is a different active, okay? And then we're going to mix in some 240 Ester 700 in this. So this is what we're going to come back in with. So that way we're not using the exact same actives, because if you already saw that there's some wounded weeds out there in the previous videos when we were scouting the derm, right? So we're kind of coming in there with a completely different active. If I could come in with a different group, I would. So anyway, now you get it, we're moving on. A little bit about how it works. So when you want to spray a grassy, such as your, I call it grassy, I slang a lot, okay? So a grassy to me is like my cereal crop, my wheat and my derm, okay? If you want to spray out a grassy like foxtail barley, brome grass, what else? Wild oats, Persian darnel. If you want to spray out anything in the grass family, of its family, out of itself, that's big money, okay? That's expensive. So only do that if you have to do that. You don't want to just blanket the whole farm. Yes, it's super easy to blanket the whole farm. It's awesome. Just say, yeah, I'm putting a full meal deal on everything. It just makes sense. But you also might break the bank. You don't want to break the bank, because if you break the bank, well, then it's Christmas. Christmas is going to be a little lean. We don't want to have a really lean Christmas, okay? So you do what you got to do, and then maybe just put a broadleaf. If you spray a broadleaf on your grasses, such as wheat and derm, it's pretty cheap. You're talking in that $6 to $10 range per acre. I'm painting with a big wide brush here, okay? It could be a few dollars still here and there, okay? But if you want to put the whole meal deal on that, now you're talking between like probably $20 to $25 an acre rate. See, there's a pretty big price difference. Now, on the reverse side of things, you want to put the full meal deal on, say, your pulse crop in the broadleaf, because, you know, it's of that family. Now all of a sudden you're in that same range, all right? You're in that 18 to 20-ish some dollar range, okay? But if you want to spray a grassy out of a broadleaf, such as your lentils, your chickpeas, that's super cheap. You can do that for probably $5 to $7 range. So you don't want to just go and break the whole bank, so you want to be wise about it. You want to, anytime you're going to grow a cereal, you always want to spray what's cheap. Anytime you grow a pulse, you want to spray what's cheap. So if you're going to grow a pulse, you always spray a grassy to make sure that you can maintain control of any weeds that you might have coming out there. Anytime you grow a cereal, maybe it doesn't need to have a grassy chemical out there like the full meal deal, but you always want to make sure that you put your broadleaf chemical out there because it's cheap to control any broadleaves that you might have coming, because it would be just a disaster. It would be a mismanaged wreck. If you grew wheat and durum and it only cost you like $6 to $10 to put a broadleaf chemical out there, because the next year you're coming back out there with lentils or chickpeas, and you can't maybe spray for some of those broadleaves, so you need to make sure that you get it out the first time out of your cereals, so you get it out of those cereals, okay? And then when you come back in, you guys get it. I'm not going to keep pounding this through your head. You guys get the idea. So it's really important to do what you got to do on the cheap side of things. You always spray everything on the cheap when it's, you get the idea. I'm tired, okay? I should be in bed right now. I don't even know why I'm not in bed. But you know what? I'm done. I'm going to bed. So I'm going to go shower. I'm going to go clean up. Thank you guys for following around. I don't know. I don't know how long this video is. It's probably close to 20 minutes. I don't know how it got that long. I'm like, I'm just going to quickly make a quick 5-minute video. 101 on the chem book. Almost 25-minute video. That's crazy. So anyway, I do not mean to bore you guys. I apologize that the camera's a little bit shakier this morning, and sometimes it's like down here. I apologize about that. It's been an incredibly long day. I need to go home. I need to go to bed. I'm going to go shower. I'm going to go shave. So thanks for following me around. To all my Patreons, you guys are freaking awesome. Thank you so much. I encourage you, if you're not a Patreon subscriber, subscribe, check it out. It's fun. It's a family. That's a family. You guys on YouTube are a family, but this is like, you guys are like the extended family, okay? The Patreons are like immediate family. They are awesome. I bounce stuff off them. It's great. You can message me. We're talking back and forth on different things. I upload stuff real time. You guys are awesome. Thanks for following me around. I'm going to bed. You know, as I was walking upstairs to the shower, I was like, cheap. I feel like they just think that I'm just going to spray everything cheap. No, that's not what I mean. If you have wild oats, I don't like weeds. I hate weeds. I hate them. Okay? I'll spray the whole meal deal. 75% of the farm, the whole meal deal. What I am getting at is if you can save a buck if you have some clean fields. But you always spray what's cheap. You never save that buck. Okay? That's just a mismanagement. If you have grasses coming out there, you spray it in your cereals. If you have broadleaves coming out in your lentils, if you have the option, you spray it, because you don't want to have a weed bank. You don't want to have weeds out there for the next year, and you definitely don't want them rotating over to your neighbors or vice versa. So I hope I just clarified that, because I figured you guys were going to have questions as I was walking upstairs. I'm like, yeah, they think that I'm just going to spray broadleaves and just do everything cheap. No. You spend money if you need to spend money. But on the other hand, you need to try and save a buck too, because at the end of the day, farmers are just spending money, and we're trying to make a dollar at the same time. So please don't misunderstand me. I hope you get it figured out. Good night.